First, I want to apologize about yesterday. My wonderful and amazing fiance has been fighting a head cold. So he was kind of passed out on the couch, and I really didn't want to interrupt him, his naps and stuff. But he's feeling much better today. Just a little headache, doing well. Um, so I also want to point out that I have added a link, a donation button to this video in honor of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, to the Breast Cancer Now Foundation. So feel free to donate $1 or anything you need to. Oh, thank you, Sierra. Yeah, I'm a fan of my little pin curl buns. That's something I like to do, especially when I'm wearing this dress for some reason. It just seems to fit. um, so some other news. I finally did format all my chapters in Blood Lily. I found a really cool divider and a nice font for the chapter heading and the first letter of each paragraph in the beginning of the chapter. I do have a picture up on the site. It looks awesome. I'm very excited. The formatting in this book is going to be way better than any of the other printings. So it is very exciting. It took me probably about 2.5 hours to get the page numbers correct. In Word, this is just a shout out to all the authors out there who like to actually publish with Word. If you want to do page numbers in Word, there's three very important things that you need to know. First of all, you need to know how to make a section break, which is different than a page break. That breaks it into different sections. So those blank pages in the beginning, the title page, your acknowledgments, everything that comes before the start of your book should be one section that has no page numbers. The next section is the body of your work, and that's where your page numbers will start if you do a section break. So I did that. That's fine. Step number 2. When you're formatting to print a book, you have to have a gutter on mirrored sides. So on the one page, it's on the left. On the other page, it's on the right. So you need to make the page numbers different for odd and even page numbers. That way that they're centered properly or in the correct corner, however you want to do it. So it has to be different on even and odd page numbers. The third thing is that when you are doing page numbers, you have to check unlink previous section. Because if you don't, you'll wind up with page numbers on the first section and then the rest of your book. It took me about 2 hours to finally get it down. So there's a quick tutorial for anyone who needs to learn how to do page numbers for anything other than doing reports or just general stuff. So yeah, nice, fascinating, good to know information. Some other updates. I just completed all the edits on chapter 15 out of 27. I put them back into AutoCrit today, or yesterday actually, and had no new corrections to make. It was amazing. It was a really good feeling. So that's done. I'm hard at work on chapter 16 now. I'm on page 214 out of 360, which is it's a much smaller number than my very first printing of Blood Lily. I didn't know much about book formatting when I originally self-published Blood Lily. I used the wrong font. I had way too much space between my paragraphs. The margins were way too big. So it wound up being a monstrous, 500 and something page book. It's very expensive to print, by the way. So now that I'm more aware, I know the proper fonts to use, the proper size, the proper gutters, the proper everything. I'm looking at 360 pages. Hi, Caden. That was my little 6-year-old running in to give a hug. He's oddly wearing a red long sleeve Christmas shirt and red shorts because he wanted to look like Deadpool. Yeah. So another interesting fact is the original publishing of Blood Lily was a whopping 167,184 words. Now I am currently down to 146,113. So I've cut a decent amount out of the book. That's not whole scenes. It's mostly just being more concise with my words, not repeating the same thought in different ways, things like that. Um, some of it has been deleting a little bit of dialogue here or there, but I actually have added a little bit where stuff was needed. So, I even if you've read Blood Lily, God, I can't even say the name of my own book. Even if you've read it already, even if you've read it multiple times with the different editions, I highly recommend this one. It's going to be so much faster, cleaner, um, more concise, and it's going to hit a little harder. I really went in depth when I was editing Gregor's story because some of the emotions were in there that I wanted, but you didn't really truly get the sense of how painful and full of guilt and shame those memories are wrapped up with for him. So it's a little bit more poignant now. Pretty happy with it. So let's get on to the question of the day from last week. So unfortunately, nobody shared. So I asked, like, what is the one thing you've always wanted to do and never have? I think it's an important question because no matter how old you are, you always need to like reevaluate where you're at and what goals you still have. Like, are you happy with your life right now as it is? Hopefully, everyone says yes. It's awesome. I generally say yes, I am happy with where my life is. Do I have goals? Absolutely, especially when it comes to these books. So, my answer for this question, and I still want to hear some of your guys' answers because I really want to get to know you better. And I mean, how can you know someone better than knowing like what their ultimate goal is? So, my ultimate goal is to hire a director to make Blood Lily into a movie or TV show. And I have 3 directors on the top of my list. I do. So if there's anyone out there watching who happens to know J.J. Abrams or Christopher Nolan or Jon Favreau, how that didn't just immediately pop to my head. If anyone out there knows them, show them my videos. Tell them to buy my book. I bet you they would love to make it into a movie. Pretty sure they would. It's an amazing story, and all 3 of those directors are awesome for many different reasons. Like J.J. Abrams is just a very talented director that's really managed to put a lot of life into Star Trek series, for instance. He does a great job with some humor and action, along with story. Christopher Nolan is one of the best storyteller directors out there. Just absolutely brilliant work. It takes his material very seriously, which I do like. And then Jon Favreau, exceptionally gifted, the best addition to the Marvel Universe and Star Wars universe with The Mandalorian. I'm excited to see season 2, which comes out later this month. Super excited. That's going to be our Friday nights for the foreseeable future. We always have the neighbors from next door come over, and it's a big deal, and we watch the latest episode of The Mandalorian. Sierra says she's always wanted to go to Australia since she was 6. I would love to go there too. That is on my list of things I want to do. It's expensive. It's expensive. That's the biggest drawback. Especially you don't want to also get, eaten by dangerous animals. So be careful where you go when you get there, because you will, I believe. So I'll just move on to the main bit of this live stream today, which is writing about difficult scenes. So I thought about this a lot, thinking about all the scenes in my book. And the one that really stood out to me as the most physically tasking scene to write was at the very, very end of the book. The fight sequence when the mysterious men ambush Chance in his apartment. Rewind that. writing fight scenes is a huge challenge. You don't want to sound like an instruction manual, first of all. You can't just describe every single action. He did this, so he did this, and then this happened, and he did this. It's boring. It's reading stereo instructions. You also want to have a clear picture of what's happening with the action too, but you do want to show and not tell. So the biggest trick to showing, not telling, is don't tell the reader exactly what's happening, but show them with words that will help them imagine exactly what's happening. It's very challenging with the fight scene, and my trick to getting through that was watching fight scenes in movies. When I write, I often picture things just as if they were in a movie. And it helps me set up my scene, the mood, all of it. Like, how do I want to actually direct this as a movie or a show? So watching material definitely helps. When I'm watching a fight scene, I can look at like the facial reactions or the mood or how something makes someone else feel, things like that. Contextual things I can use to really bring emotion to the scene and make it visually stimulating, even though it's in a book in written form. It's tricky. It's tricky. There's a few things that I would do in the book that's almost impossible to do in a written form. In a movie, you can show like a very quick shot of something that's just glance, and it's a clue to something that'll happen later on, but you don't necessarily understand that when you're watching it. If you say it, it's way more obvious in a book. So, and I just lost my train of thought for a second. So the first rule about Fight Club, don't talk about Fight Club. Yeah, absolutely. And Joanne, really no apologies are necessary for being late. It's totally cool. So fight scenes, super challenging. I would pick that as my hardest scene to write in the entire book, but there are other scenes that are difficult. Some of the other ones is the autopsy scene with Mariah's body, and then again in book 2 in the morgue. Again, you don't want to sound like stereo instructions, but you want to make it realistic. So I conquered that a little bit by making it mostly dialogue. So I had Lilith reciting the things that she saw for the most part. So she was telling the audience exactly what was going on and what the body looked like, but I wasn't. So I made it mostly dialogue with her little tape recorder. That definitely helped. I did want to use real medical terminology. It's important for me to be accurate. TV shows and movies so often get things wrong when it comes to medical stuff. After going through nursing school, it makes movies completely difficult to watch sometimes. Like Doctor Strange is a great example. Perfect example. I loved that movie. It was so cool. But the one scene that bothers me so bad that it makes it difficult to watch was the scene where she stabbed his heart with a needle to remove the blood around it because he was in tamponade. Which I don't know how you could do that blindly without equipment. Yeah. And then he flatlined. This is the biggest lie in Hollywood. I mention it in book 1. Biggest lie in Hollywood. He flatlined and she shocked him back to life. It doesn't work that way. Those electrical paddles, which are now stickers, by the way, not paddles, don't shock a heart back into working. It's not jumpstart cables. It's not, it doesn't work that way. All an electrical shock does is interrupt a bad rhythm. So if your heart's beating in a way it's not supposed to, that electrical shock will stop the heart, hoping it would restart in a normal rhythm. So you can't jumpstart your heart with jumper cables. Doesn't work. So yeah, it makes it challenging when you've been through nursing school to watch some things, especially medical shows, because even if they are grounded in like medicine, the whole point of it, like Grey's Anatomy, they still get so much stuff wrong that it's ridiculous. So don't get your medical facts from TV or movies, children. Mm-mm. So the autopsy scenes are difficult. Action scenes are way worse. Gregor's story was challenging too because it's all dialogue. It can be hard sometimes when you're just talking at a reader for a long time. So I did break it up a lot with his emotions and how difficult it was for him to tell the story and how difficult it was for Lilith to hear the story. Because, yes, best PSA ever, don't get your medical information from TV and movies. So when you're writing a scene that's so emotionally charged for so many different people in different ways, it can be challenging. Gregor doesn't want to tell the story, but he has to. And it's something he's held on to for centuries. Never told a living soul before. So it's challenging for him to tell it. It's painful. He's reliving it. It makes it real. For Lilith, it's extremely painful to hear because it basically dissolves everything she ever thought she knew. So Lilith's emotional journey through the whole book, it's painful. It does make her a better person, I believe, but everything she knew, her entire universe, everything is completely turned upside down, inside out, torn apart. So she doesn't really know who she is at the end of the book. It makes it poignant. I've been there. I mean, I do write from real experiences a lot, even if it's not exactly the same experiences. The sensations and stuff, the emotions are still real. They're very real. So the other part about writing Gregor's story that was challenging to me was knowing how far I could go. I knew that this one act, the epicenter of the entire saga, the one thing that it all came back to, had to be something so horrible, so debilitating, that you just couldn't come back from it. And that was the point, is that even though Gregor was a perfectly loving father and, adored his daughter Lilith, and just they had a great life, he never did come back from that. Never recovered from that. I mean, some semblance of recovery, I suppose, but it wasn't the same. So it was difficult to bring that story to life because I wasn't sure if I would lose readers over it, honestly. I was worried because it's an extreme act that happens there. A very extreme act. Losing his daughter that in that manner, I can't imagine how that would ever be okay. It just can't ever be okay. So there's a lot of emotions tied up in that, and it was very difficult to write about. It's even difficult for me to talk about it right now, honestly. And I did just finish editing that section of the book, so it's a little bit fresher in my mind. So another painful one for me to listen to write about was Alvarez's funeral. Because I knew there had to be a confrontation between Gloria and Lilith. There had to be. If it wasn't for Lilith and her father, Alvarez wouldn't be dead. I know that sounds harsh, but that's the ultimate truth. Does that mean that Lilith is responsible and should be held responsible? No, absolutely not. She had nothing to do with any of that. She didn't even want him to come down there. If you really want to point blame, it's all on Gregor, honestly. Like every single tiny piece of this story rests solely on Gregor's shoulders. Well, Gregor and Duncan, honestly. You can't just give Duncan a free pass because you'd accrue a conscience eventually. So it was difficult to write that because, there had to be love there, but she had to hold Lilith responsible. And Chance defending her it was a great moment to write. I really loved that moment, and I love those odd. There's a couple odd moments in the book where not just Chance, but once Cohen as well, really stand up for her and make her realize that she's not giving herself enough credit. So I do love those moments. They're great. Let's see, a question. So, does Lily ever decide to go to Scotland, basically where it all began? That is a very good question. It's a great question. I haven't broached that yet. That possibly will be something that comes up in book 4. I have toyed around with the idea, but I don't have solid plans yet in book 4 exactly how it's going to happen. I have mapped out like the first chapter or so, like the things I want to happen. But that's still a possibility. It's a good thought. I like it. I like it. Book 3 mostly takes place in New York City and then also upstate New York, and does make an appearance in York, Pennsylvania. So there will be anyone who lives in this area will actually recognize a few things, and I'm sure it'll make them chuckle quite a bit. Especially the comment about, trying to drive in the city when people just walk right out in front of your car on a regular basis. They don't even look. I don't know if it's just a Pennsylvania thing or if that happens in most cities, but it's very bizarre. Very bizarre. So some of another one of the scenes that, this is a really good one. I wrote down the scenes that I wanted to talk about. So, book 2, which I think, at least I know Sierra and Joanne have read book 2. So book 2, there's a scene. It's one of Lilith's nightmares, which, real quick, little side note here. Lilith has night terrors, and I started to talk about this last live stream and kind of got off topic. But Lilith does have night terrors because I wanted those things that happen to her to have an effect, and you see that effect. And it comes through in her dreams. And the reason that was so important to me is because I suffered from night terrors myself for many, many years. Probably about 10 or 15 years. Now, not so much, thankfully, because I realized where they came from. But when I was in high school, and this is part of the reason that I started writing in the first place, honestly. But when I was in high school, I was a sophomore. I had two best friends. We were like the little three amigos. It was me, my friend Jennifer, and my friend Brian. And we were pretty much inseparable. We did all of our group projects together and hung out together, watched movies, and did all kinds of stuff. So when homecoming came around, Brian asked me to go with him, and I said no because he was my friend. I didn't think of him as anything other than my friend. And I didn't want to make it weird. I did suggest that me, him, and Jennifer all go together, just like the three amigos. He didn't seem too happy with that, and me and Jennifer wound up going without him. He didn't go. So we were in the bathroom, and we heard some of the more popular girls in the bathroom laughing and chatting and talking about how, Brian killed himself. And we were angry. We went out and immediately defended him and said that was ridiculous and everything else. Well, come to find out the next morning, it was actually true. He did hang himself the night before, which is horribly, horribly sad. But I held myself responsible for a good 2 weeks, thinking it was entirely my fault, 100% my fault. And then his mom found one of his writing journals and gave it to me because she knew the story, because I did talk to her about it, and we cried and hugged each other. So she gave me one of his journals, and he wrote about my friend Shelley, and apparently he had a huge, huge crush on her, and apparently his father was fairly abusive, and he'd never talked to us about that. So there were a lot of other factors, and it wasn't my fault. But I held myself responsible for years because I felt like I had not made myself available enough to talk to him so that he could open up about the things going on in his life, the things that were so horrible that he felt the only answer was to end it. Caden, bye. Talking. No, bye. I'm talking. Bye. 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 Sorry about that. So, it was traumatic for me, and because of that, I had night terrors for years. They were all different, but they had a common theme. There was me and a bunch of people, and I would try to save them all, rescue them all, and fail miserably, and we would all die. So we kind of know where the book comes from, actually, with that. So in book two, back on topic now. In book two, Lilith has a really bad night terror, the one with PSNO in it. So that one was painful for me to write because she trusted Chance so much, and he was like the one thing she could depend on in her entire world at that time, like the only thing she could depend on, and I took that away from her. You know, someone once asked me, if I could be any character in my book, which character would I be? And I said, none of them. Are you kidding me? Do you know what I do to those poor people? Oh God. So it was difficult because, you know, her only lifeline I took away from her in a very traumatic way. And even though that nightmare wasn't real, it felt real to her. She held him responsible, but knew that it wasn't really his fault because it's in her head. But it didn't change things. Like, she reacted as if everything in that nightmare was real, as she would have, really. I mean, that's very poignant to me. I've had that experience before, like having nightmares about people, and I'm struggling not to hold people responsible for the actions that occurred in my head. So, her dream in book two with PSNO and Chance trying to kill her in her dream, it was difficult. I didn't really want to do it, but I had to. And it's kind of prophetic at the same time. And most of her dreams tend to be, which is, you know, a nice, interesting little tidbit. There's always some aspect in her dream that may not completely be explainable. Like, yes, she could have just thought of that and then actually happened. That's weird. It's a coincidence. Knowing Ashcroft's face, recognizing it from her dream. I mean, the only possible explanation for that is that in that very quick flash in the basement before he attacked her in the very beginning of the book, she might have got a glimpse of his face enough to know what he looked like. So I always have that almost prophetic edge to her dreams, and it's fun to play with. But towards the end of the book, that same situation actually happens. The best part about it is by that time she's emotionally prepared because her nightmare prepared her for this moment. It's still traumatic, definitely, because it's happening in real life and it's not just a dream, but she's already been dealing with these emotions, so it makes it easier. It makes it easier for her. The last scene that it was very difficult for me to write. I had to leave the book and come back several times before I could really finish. This scene was towards the end of book two, and that's Cohen's torture scene. It was very difficult for me to write because I didn't want to do these things. I love Cohen. He is probably one of my favorite characters to write. I love him. I mean, yes, Lilith and Chance, absolutely. But Cohen is the most fun to write. He really is. So I didn't want to do any of those horrible, horrible things to him. But it was necessary for the story. It was just so emotionally painful, though. And it changed the tone of my books. So in book one, horrible things happened, but they happened past tense, and you saw the result of what happened. In book two, horrible things happen, present tense, and you're there and you witness it and you see the emotions and you see the pain and the strife and everything rolled into it actively as it's happening. So it's a lot different. Well, not his death. Not his death, Joanne. Cohen is not dead. He may have been tortured pretty close to that, but he's not dead. So it's an advancement in the dark depths of my books from book 1 to book 2, because you're not just seeing the after effects of torture, you're actually seeing torture. So it's very difficult. Well, I'm reading a question. Didn't the siren have a hold of Chance and put the idea of killing Lily in his head where he tried? At the end of book 2, yes, he did. Like, she was controlling him and he tried to kill her. But in her dream, it was just a dream. She wasn't there. She wasn't controlling him. It didn't happen. So that's the difference. Like, one was a night terror towards I think it's the middle of the book, and the other was an actual scene that happened towards the end, right before. Oh, Alvarez's death. Yes, that was rough, but I knew that was going to happen, so I guess I was a little bit more prepared for it. Not that I didn't know other things were going to happen because I wrote them, but I always knew that Alvarez was not going to make it out of book 1 alive. I knew it was necessary. Like, there are some elements that just have to happen in a book or a show or a movie or a story. There's a great author, Joseph Campbell, who writes about mythology and archetypes throughout myths. And some of the archetypes he talks about, you can definitely pick out in different stories. And a very, very common theme is that the mentor dies and the student evolves. And Alvarez was a mentor for Lilith. Like, he's the one that guided her when it came to work. And they were also very, very close friends. So he needed to die for her to grow, which sounds awful. And in real life, that doesn't always happen. But in a story, it's more poignant and cuts deeper. And I like emotional trauma. I like causing emotional trauma. That sounds awful. It sounds really bad. But it makes everything else sweeter when you've dealt with such darkness in a book. I really believe that it affects you on a deeper level, and you connect more with it if it's done properly. So people mean more because they can come and go. Like, if you know that you can lose anybody in that book, like, you value the characters more. And I believe you have to have a deep connection with characters in order to really get through a story. I remember once I read an Anne Rice novel. I tried to read an Anne Rice novel. Let me change that. It was Pandora. I read one chapter, which pretty much described a room for most of the chapter, and then like 5 or 10 seconds of conversation happened between two characters. And at the end of that chapter, after hearing the description of the room in such detail, I really didn't care what happened to either of the characters. In fact, I kind of hoped they both died. So that was a sign that I shouldn't keep reading. So, no, I do not read Anne Rice. And that's pretty much why. I like fast-paced books. I like to be, like, taken on a ride. Like, don't sit there and, like, describe everything. Use quick words and get through it. Emotional drama works in your series. Thank you. Thank you, Joanne. I really try to make, I don't try to just kill people or gross people out or shock people. I don't try. That's not my ultimate goal. They're tools. Those are all tools that I use to take the reader to the places that I need them to go for the story to work. So I don't just throw stuff in like, oh, this is the most shocking thing I can think of, I'm going to slap that in there. No, everything I do has purpose. Even the most disgusting things. Like, I think the most disgusting thing I wrote in Blood Lily was the fact that, the thing that bothered me the most, I should say, was the fact that Mariah's ears were like razor cut into ribbons and they just kind of flopped around. It still kind of makes me nauseous. I was nauseous writing it. But it was important to the story, as weird as that sounds, that he destroyed everything significant about her, especially her face is very important to the story. So pretty much everything in there has a purpose. It really does. And I just finished editing the scene about Gregor talking about what happens with Ashcroft when he finally gets to him. And I like how that's echoed again in book 2 when Cohen was put through it, quite honestly. So it ties together nicely. So there are a lot of things that are challenging about writing my books, honestly, and it does take a lot of fortitude, and I have to write through a lot of very deep emotions, some of which are extremely personal. But using real experiences and your own real emotions, like just as if you're acting, it makes things more realistic to the reader. They can tell. They can tell if you are describing something that you know personally deep down. I mean, it makes a difference in writing. It really does. And not that you can't write about things that you've never happened to you before, but you can use emotions from similar things to kind of echo that and enhance it. So there are ways to get through writing difficult scenes. You can do it. If you need inspiration, watch movies. Pay attention to the faces. Pay attention to the mood. All of those things. They all come together in a scene. So it's not just writing exactly what happens. It's describing the world around what happens and letting the reader understand what happens by that description. So I hope this video has helped with anyone who's struggling with writing. Not that this is just for writers, but I do like to put things in there for anyone who's thinking about writing, because I highly encourage it. It's very therapeutic, even if no one ever reads it. It's a good medium, especially for us introverts, although I'm slowly becoming less of an introvert and more of an extrovert. I really enjoy doing these live streams. They're a lot of fun. And my cousin Stephanie did her first live stream today. She was very nervous, the poor thing, but she did a great job. It was really cool. She has a business called Reclaimed Splinters, and she does amazing, beautiful, beautiful work. A lot of woodwork and cool signs, painted signs and things like that. And she has all kinds of stuff. She just opened her own shop. It's just absolutely gorgeously done. It's like, you know, she is channeling Joanne Gaines when she decorated that place. It's gorgeous. So definitely check that out. It's very cool. So it's nice to see her joining the community of live streamers. I do feel more of a community connection. I like the the interaction with my audience. I definitely want to get you guys answering some questions, though. I really do. I want to see those answers. I want to get to the nitty gritty. I know that Joanne posted a few more movies for the Desert Island Challenge. Good job. I want to see more Desert Island movies. I do love, love, love movies. It's my favorite category when playing Trivial Pursuit, especially the Stranger Things edition, which is the most fun by far. So I want to see those answers. But today I talked about a lot of things that make me uncomfortable. It's difficult to talk about some things, just as much as it is to write them. So in the spirit of discomfort, I want to go the completely opposite direction with my question of the day. So I want to know what makes you guys feel warm and cozy inside. Like after seeing like a super scary movie, or you're just not feeling good, or your heart's been broken, whatever the case, what's your go-to? What's your go-to? So that's my question I want to know for the next live stream. I am off this weekend. I work Thursday, Friday. I'm off this weekend, but I will most likely be doing Halloween stuff with the kids. I might do an appearance on Saturday, possibly, depending on what's going on. Definitely not on Sunday, although the Eagles play on Thursday night this week. So Sunday is a free day for me and my fiance to catch up with some old friends we haven't seen in a while, so that'll be fun. So I then work Monday and Tuesday. So my next live stream will probably be a week from today. And it's a long time. Possibly Saturday, we'll see. But at the latest, it'll be next Wednesday. So you have plenty of time to think about your comfort go-tos and your desert island movies and what things that you want to do and have not done yet. So lots of homework for you guys. I want to see some answers. It'll be great. I'll chat about them and, we'll have a discussion, which I like. Also, okay, so Joanne just mentioned, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate that. That's awesome. I wanted to jump on here. First of all, I wanted to do like updates in a really cool, different way and really connect with people. But the more that I've done this, the more I really want to reach out to people and talk about subjects, especially concerning writing, but also concerning life in general. So if you guys have any questions, just ask. Please feel free. I'm not scared to talk about different topics. It doesn't have to be related to my books, definitely. I mean, it can be questions about everything. You want to see Kay in the costume? I'll see what I can do. I'll post a picture at the very least. I know he gets to dress up for school on Friday, and he's planning to go as Pikachu. I know for actual Halloween, I work, which sucks, and the day after. So we're doing Halloween this Saturday, and he has a Stay Puft costume. River has a Ghostbuster costume. So does Daddy. And I have a ghost costume. So I'll see what I can do as far as pictures. I'll share. All right. So you guys have your homework for the day. I've given you guys some awesome updates. Chapter 15 is a wrap. I'm on chapter 16. I was actually working on it this morning before the live stream. And you have my answers to my questions from last week. So I want to hire a director. So if anyone knows these directors, get out there. Show them my book. If I win the lottery, I'll just hire them. It's fine. I'll figure out a way to contact them. So I want you guys to have an excellent weekend, pre-Halloween weekend. I would love to see your guys' costumes too, by the way. So feel free to post your costumes on my page. That would be cool. And as I come up with new things and as the book gets closer and closer to being finished, I will share all the wonderful details with you. So you guys have a great pre-Halloween weekend, and then have a good Halloween weekend. I will see you in the meantime, probably Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of next week. So have a good time, post your costumes, and do your homework. I want to see your answers. You guys have a good one. Thank you for joining me.